video here on Dog Post YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should go to dogpost.com, dawgpost.com. I know there's a lot of you out there watching this. I could see that from the Nick Chubb video from after Georgia's game with Clemson, a 45-21 win over the Tigers. Georgia starts out the season 1-0 and jumped pretty quick, 12 notches up in the AP poll. Let's get right to the questions because I'm behind this week. Dixie Dog 02 asks, will Justin Scott Wesley play, and how effective will he be from a timing standpoint with Mason for the South Carolina game? Georgia needs a deep threat desperately. Also, did Toby Johnson play, or is he buried in the depth chart? I did not see Toby Johnson play. That doesn't mean he didn't. I didn't see him play. I don't think he did. Justin, it's hard to know if he's going to play. They do need some down the field help. I mean, I think Mike Bobo talked about that this week, and Mike's exactly right. It's time to go ahead and get that down the field traditional Georgia striking offense going. That didn't happen against Clemson as it relates to the passing game. I mean, Georgia wound up with only 131 yards. That's not good enough through the air. I think they did what they wanted to do. 18 for 26 is great, but They didn't do what you wanted to do, and I think that Justin coming back and even Malcolm Mitchell coming back, I do think probably they'll have one of those two. I say that now, I don't know that, but two, it doesn't. It seems like for sure those guys are going to play against Tennessee for sure. A couple more questions. One about Chris Mays. One I don't know the answer to literally. I've never necessarily heard these names. Okay, did Tramell Terry make it into the game? I know he wanted to play against Dabo Swinney. I did not notice him anywhere on the field. Now let's remember that guys like Keith Marshall, Justin Scott Wesley, Malcolm Mitchell, and Tramell are still coming off of ACLs. Tramell obviously has had a longer time to get ready, but he's also playing a different position, I think, or at least a little bit. We don't really know where. I mean, Tramell is more of an athlete, and right now he's playing in the secondary. He was not listed on Georgia's two deep with the safeties, but I don't think Lucas Red is going to be in the two deep the whole year. So we'll see. I thought Georgia's secondary, by the way, played pretty well. Clemson wound up. Deshaun Watson had one spectacular throw, but Clemson wound up with only 189 yards after there was a time in the second quarter where Georgia didn't play that great on defense. Other than that, I thought the whole game they were outstanding. To only allow Clemson to have less than 300 yards, or fewer than 300 yards, I should say, on 76 offensive plays. I thought Georgia played well. I thought that there wasn't much to complain about in the grand scheme of things. They wound up Georgia stopping Clemson on 7 of 20 third down conversions. Now, you would have liked to have stopped him on one of the fourth down conversions, but hey, that's a lot better seemingly than it had been in the past. Okay, UGA Dog Forever 08 asks, Chris Conley seemed a little banged up. What's his issue? Chris has had a shoulder issue for a while, and he looked like he bruised it up a little bit against Clemson. I think Chris will play. Georgia needs Chris at this stage. He's not as explosive as Justin, and he's not the playmaker Malcolm Mitchell is, but he's still, a very dependable receiver, and he was their deep threat. As soon as he got hurt, that was gone during the game. If South Carolina stacks the box, do you believe the receivers and Mason can beat them throwing the football? South Carolina looked pretty rough the other day. I know everybody's giving Kenny Hill a lot of credit, as they should, but boy, that was bad. And that a lot of that was A&M, but there were a couple things I saw from South Carolina that I did not like. There were guys running wide open in the secondary. Number one, number two, Dylan Thompson did not play well. I think he had 4 touchdowns, something like that, but I think it was 20 for 40. That's not good. So, but I think, Spurrier will clean it up. But they're going to be an underdog, South Carolina. And they were a 3-point underdog. Georgia was going to be about a to a 4-point underdog heading into that game. Now they're about a 3.5-point favorite, and that line could go up simply because there's a lot of doubt with South Carolina right now, and people are building up this East Carolina game like like they could lose. If they lose that game, Steve Spurrier could say, "Hey, listen, I've had my fun. I'm not having fun anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore." So we'll see. Overreaction. You don't want to overreact too much. Did Jonathan Rump play? I did not see him play. What else are you hearing about him? Right now, nothing. So I wouldn't get too pumped up about Rump. He's got a great body. Obviously, he has some ability. There's no question about that. But he's just completely disappeared. Any chance Justice Scott Wesley or Malcolm Mitchell plays against the Cox? Yes, there's definitely a chance. Is there a certainty? I don't know. I'd say Mike Davis for South Carolina is more likely to play against Georgia than those two guys. Swanee Dog 03 asks, what changed defensively in the second half to completely change the game? Do you think Georgia will run the ball as much against South Carolina as they did the other night, or air it out a bit more? I think Georgia would like to be more balanced against South Carolina than they were against Clemson. Again, 450 total yards of offense is certainly nothing to sneeze at, 45 points. But Georgia only wound up with 131 passing yards. Now look, you don't have to pass. You don't pass. It's that simple. 328 rushing yards is crazy. I don't know if that's going to continue with Georgia. That seems like it's asking a lot. And they really blistered Clemson pretty good on the ground. That's supposed to be a really good front seven. But that didn't happen for the most part until the third quarter. Then that's when you could tell Georgia, on the sideline, it's not like I'm seeing anything other people aren't seeing. A lot of times I can see the line up close. But other than that, you can get I don't know if you can get a better feel. If you watch football and you know football, you could tell Georgia was a better team. And I said that to people at the half. I said, listen, they're probably going to explode. I just don't know when. And it took them a little bit of time, but 3 straight plays, 21 points. I mean, teams aren't going to survive that. And I would expect that from this point in the season forward for Georgia. Now, they're going to get into some games, and it could be against South Carolina, but I doubt it. They're going to get into some games, maybe Auburn, Florida, sort of your traditional rivals, where those guys are going to come to play big time. And, Georgia's not going to be able to just explode on them all the time. But if you look back, this is another ranked team that Mike Bobo scored more than 40 points on, and it's starting to add up. And certainly another ranked team he scored 35 or more on. So the problem has not been the offense at Georgia. And it has not been the problem since probably 2003. So certainly since Mike took over. What changed defensively? The way they got out of man. Okay, if you've got man coverage on the outside, you can stop people all the day long. But if you've got man and guys are going to make throws and make plays, then Georgia's beatdown of LSU can happen like it did in 2004. Guys like David Green can look like all-stars. I think that's what happened. They got out of it. They got out of the man, and instead of Bowman and Swan and sort of one-on-one, and then Swan can probably play okay one-on-one, but these corners are not that good right now. We know that they're going to get out of that. But if they can somehow get enough confidence to play man-to-man, and Jeremy Pruitt obviously felt like they could play man well enough to compete, then Georgia's not going to get scored on much more than about 17 points in a game. Because man-to-man, if you can play it right, really in any sport, whether you're talking about basketball or certainly football with the DBs, then you can change your defense. Because man means, you're depending on the safety to some degree sometimes, and you have zero coverage back there, which means the guys are legitimately man-to-man. That can be tough. Jeremy Pruitt got out of that, saw that Clemson's receivers, who are playmakers, that they were doing what they wanted to do on the outside. He got out of that. Clemson had 14 yards in the second half. I mean, I watched Clemson pretty closely, and I watched Clemson pretty closely, Florida pretty closely, South Carolina, and so I mean, I know that sort of what Clemson's got as it relates to playmakers, and they still got them, Sharon Peak and guys like that, but they had no real run game. I mean, they only wound up with 102 yards on 44 carries. It's about two yards and change a carry. I mean, if you're starting looking at second down and 8, that's typically a passing down. And and Clemson was 17 for 32 in the pass game. That's just barely over 50%. So if you start adding those things up, that means a lot of punts, and that's what happened with Clemson after a while. They wound up with 10 punts in the game. Not good. URT08, I don't know what that means, asks, do you think McKenzie will eventually takes over punt return from Davis? If so, when? What's the story with Shadow Fintech? Did he play? Is he healthy? I don't remember Shadow out there. He was the backup behind Bowman. I don't recall him being out there. I know he got banged up in fall camp. As it relates to Isaiah McKenzie, I think Reggie Davis can do a lot of the things Isaiah McKenzie can do, but one thing apparently Reggie Davis can do for sure is possess the football. Look, if Reggie Davis gets loose, he's gone. Same, just like Isaiah McKenzie. McKenzie's probably a better special teams player, but Reggie Davis, I think they're very comfortable with him catching the ball. That's the only reason I think that he's back there. And he can make plays, Can make plays. After a couple, you could tell he knew what he was doing back there. Now, last year, that wasn't the case. I mean, he didn't look as good last year back there. The Boy Racer 45 has a couple of questions. Nobody is doubting Georgia's talent at running back and the ability to run the ball. What do you make of the passing game? Georgia didn't really take any shots down the field against Clemson. Do you think that teams will start loading the box until Mason shows he can loosen the defense a little bit? Do you think he has the ability and Georgia has the talent to do this? Because I have some questions about the receiving core after Saturday's performance. Well, they can throw it, but they didn't have to. So I think the better answer to that question is maybe a question itself, which is, or a statement, which I've said a lot. Hudson Mason's he's gonna have to do it at some point when it's on him, and Georgia can't run because if you want to stop the run, you can stop the run, but Hudson's not completely without skill back there, his own arm, and then he's got some receivers that can hurt you, so they do have to concern themselves with the pass. When Malcolm and Justin get back, at some point, that will change Georgia's offense. And they could start averaging about 40 points a game. And I think that, that's in a traditional offense, scoring 40 points a game, you're not in a spread, you're not necessarily hurrying up all the time. That's a lot of points. Boy Racer 45-2 continues asking the defense was extremely impressive in the second half. It was obvious Georgia has a tremendous amount of playmakers in the front seven. In your opinion, what is this ceiling for the defense in this year's national ranking? I think the ceiling is probably top 25. I think much more than that would be a heck of a job. Now, everybody's going to run Todd Grantham down. That's fine. It was time for a change. There's no question about that. But Jeremy Pruitt's got a lot to work with in that front seven. He has some amazing pass rushers. What are you talking about? Jordan, Leonard, or Lorenzo Carter even. Ramik Wilson and Amarlo are tackling machines. The front three, they can rotate pretty heavily. I thought Josh Dawson played great. So kudos to that former Tucker Tiger. So he played very well. But they're playing offenses that, although they are not as explosive as they were last year, they're still explosive. And, they got to deal with Auburn. If they can hold Auburn under 32 points, they'll probably win that game. But to say, to be top 25, you probably can't have too many games where the other team's scoring over 24 points very often. And this time Georgia held a legitimate but neutered Clemson offense to 21. That's not bad. I mean, less than 21 or fewer than 21, you're probably doing all right as a defense because teams are going to score. There's too much favoring offenses these days. Georgian asks, On a first down on kickoff, Sonny Michel dove in and made a tackle for the Dogs. On the TV, it said it was Sonny Michel. I was wondering if it was Tramel Terry with the same number. It was definitely Sonny Michel, and you can see him and McKenzie and Reggie Davis. I don't know how many punt returns. I mean, Clemson had 2 punt returns for -6 yards. People aren't going to be returning punts on Georgia this year. Not if those 3 guys are getting down the field. If those 3 guys are your gunners, they get down there too fast. Danger Ranger 6969 asks a couple questions. Do you think the offensive line might be better than what you expected? Nope, I expected them to be good. Now, it's better than other people expected them, but I expected them to be pretty good. And I think they are pretty good. I think it's time people start giving them credit. Number 2, is AJ Turman or Brendan Douglas moving to fullback? Doesn't look like it to me. I think those guys, Brendan was out there. I didn't see AJ play. Brendan was out there on special teams. Listen, if people want to win the national championship, and that's what this season looks like it's about. It looks like it's about winning the conference and at least getting into the playoffs and trying to win the national championship. Then guys like Brendan Douglas can't be carrying the ball a ton. They have to play special teams and they have to play them well. And so that's, Brendan Douglas as an upfront guy on the kickoff return is a guy that you can't just pooch it to because he's going to take off running. You got to have guys like Brendan Douglas. Remember when this program has been special, guys like Brendan Douglas have been the 4th and 5th guys. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Do I think they moved to fullback? Brendan's not a fullback. He's a running back. Who was the backup for quarterback for the Clemson game? I feel like I've been through this enough. It's Bryce Ramsey. Whether we'll see Bryce early in this season or not, I don't know. My guess is we might, because if there's somebody that can throw the ball down the field, it's Bryce Ramsey. I think Hudson played Hudson. I think a lot of people wanted him to be playing checkers, where he just go real fast. But Hudson was playing chess the other day. He was throwing that ball out of bounds, just burning it. But he wasn't going for the kill. He left that up to Todd and company. There's different ways to win championships. Payne Hall asks, I thought Jay Rome might be a bigger factor Saturday night. Was that a factor of the limited pass attempts? Yes, but I think that the Titans are not that great right now at Georgia. And, in the grand scheme of things, you have a particular amount of playmakers, and Todd Gurley is one of them. Apparently Nick Chubb is one of them. And, Sony's one of them. Michael Bennett. Chris, when he's not hurt. So they've got guys. And it doesn't have to be that the tight ends are, the 2nd or 3rd option in the pass game. They might be the 4th, or the 5th after the screen to the running back. That might be where they belong. They're not where you want to be compared to what Georgia's had in the past. Now, Blazevich, I thought, was okay, and they hit Jay once. Should have had Blazevich another time. Blazevich could be, certainly looks like an NFL kind of guy. Going to have to add mass. But, Jay is still getting where he needs to go. I think the tight ends are the weak link in the offense. In my opinion, and that's really saying something because they're not that bad. Let's see. HP Dog asks, there were a lot of no-shows last week. Fientag, Malcolm Parrish, Reggie Wilkerson, Tramel Terry, Brendan Langley, Toby Johnson. Any information about suspensions or why they were missing in action? I think Toby was banged up. I think Fientag was banged up. I don't know that, but I don't think any of those guys were suspended. Parrish is brand new. Wilkerson's coming off an ACL. Tramel's coming off an ACL, although longer. And Brendan Langley switching positions. So, could it be a suspension? Sure. Do I know about it? No, because if I knew it and could report it, I would do that. And but we don't really run around going nuts at dog posts. If you can't report it, we don't put it out there because when we publish something, it goes out to a lot of people. So I don't know of any suspensions, but sure. If they missed the first game, that question should be asked. It won't be answered by anybody legitimate at Georgia. But I have not heard that. So, and I would say I've heard that, and if I knew it as fact, I would report it. I think people remember the Bakari Rambo and Alec Ogletree thing that was reported like 9 months before everybody else, so or 6 months, whatever it was. So when we got it, we got it. But if we don't have it, and we can't report it, we can't report it. If I hear things and I'll say, hey, I've heard it. I haven't heard that on any of those guys. So we'll see. Frankly, it's hard for me to really say. So that's why I'm kind of rambling on unapologetically. Look, I thought Georgia looked good. I think that I think they should win the East. I think I've said this for some time now. Beating South Carolina doesn't win the East for you. It helps a lot. Losing to them hurts, but doesn't end it. If South Carolina loses that game, they're gonna have a hard time coming back into this race because they still have to go to Auburn and to Florida, and they would need Georgia at that point to lose 3 games in the conference, which happened last year. So I think they're the favorite in the East. They could be the favorite in the conference right now. I don't think the betting lines have shifted because I think it's still Alabama. But Georgia's not going to play that well all the time, and I think they did really play pretty well. I think Clemson's probably a top 20 team. They're not a top 10 team, and but Georgia is. They will fight you. They are passionate. They are confident, and if Hudson plays the way he did and adds in a couple of deep throws, it's going to be a good team. And if the secondary plays about like they did, with the exception of maybe one missed tackle and one blown coverage, it wasn't even blown coverage. It was just great plays to some degree by the Clemson guys. I mean, Ramik got beat on a ball, but I mean, Deshaun Watson threw a great ball right there. That's going to happen in big games. This team needs to just be what they are, who they are. I thought the offensive line played really well. I think there were no holds, no penalties on the offensive line, maybe with the exception, no holding, I know. But it was a pretty clean game by Georgia. They need to keep that up. They should beat South Carolina and Columbia. It's going to be hot. South Carolina's going to be pretty desperate, just the way Georgia was this past year. But Georgia's the better team. I think we've seen that. And they need to control Dylan Thompson. I think if he's hovering about 50% for South Carolina, Georgia will probably win that game because. But I think you want to pressure him. He's not mobile, not the way that Connor was. I mean, Connor was a heck of a quarterback now. Ain't no doubt about that. In terms of, I mean, he possessed the ball a lot, etc. I just don't trust Dylan Thompson the way that I did Connor Shaw for a lot of different reasons. Okay, Georgia wins 45-21. Dean Legge Show. If you're not on Dog Post, just go check it out. We're having a record number of people come into Dog Post. You should be one of them. Come check us out.